Hi everybody, it's Andrew Maguire here. I'm going to do a quick tutorial about how to edit a headshot in black and white. Now, a few weeks ago I shot the headshots of the students at Gloucester Uni. Bethan here was obviously a student and a client of mine, and she's come back saying that she'd want this photograph in black and white, because I offer all my clients a black and white folder and a colour folder so they can choose between the various options. Now, the first thing I want to obviously mention is we've got to adjust this into 8x10. And if you didn't just see what I just did, I know I might be teaching you to suck eggs here, but obviously on the develop tab here, there's obviously a colour or a black and white. So obviously hit black and white, and that takes all the saturation straight out of the photo. So the next thing that you will have just seen me do is crop to 10x8. Because we're UK British standards in the industry, we have to crop to 10x8. So there we go. And I got out of jail here because if you can see, my original photo I left a good few inches at the top of the frame there. So I've got myself out of jail a little bit by cropping by 8x10, so I can crop right down, so we haven't really lost any information. So hit the black and white, and then let's get stuck in. So I quite like this straight away, because what we're doing is we're filling the frame full of information. Now, what I like to do is with ladies, with girls, is obviously try and keep the flow of their hair in the shot as much as possible. Because, I mean, if I crop it even further, people say, well, it's a headshot, surely it should be like that. But, I mean, if you look at that, that's ridiculous. That's way too close, isn't it? So if we put it back to where it was, which is an acceptable amount, I'm going to reset. I'm going to do that again because I've tripped myself up there. So I'm trying to be clever. So as you can see, I'm going to go 8x10. I'm going to change it to black and white. And as I was saying, we've filled the frame a little bit. I might have shot a little bit to the left there, but I don't really think that matters too much, as Bethan is actually leaning that way. So the majority of her features actually come out on the right hand side of the picture, including that hair that falls down her left shoulder, which is great. So the first thing I always do is we're going to just enhance those eyes. So I'm going to zoom in 1:1, and I'm just going to pick up a brush here. I'm going to drop that down to Iris Enhance. Let's see what we're doing. So we press the Show Selected Mask Overlay, and let's just colour in those eyes. And as I've said in previous tutorials, don't worry too much about the pupil if you blacken the pupil, because it's black. It's not really going to make too much of a difference because we're only making subtle changes anyway. Just going to sort of nip those little bits in that I've overshot. And if I just press the feather down a little bit, it should make it a little bit easier to line up to correct my wrongs. And I'll just do that again once more. The good thing is about feather is, you know, the peripheries of what you select. If what you're selecting is not, dead on, then that doesn't really matter so much, because on the outsides of what you're selecting, it literally feathers it. So the opacity becomes reduced, and it's not such a hard edge. If you make any mistakes, you don't see your mistakes too much. So I'm honestly not drunk. I've made a couple of mistakes already. Let me just reselect these eyes, and then I'm going to deselect that so I can see what I'm doing. And I normally like to put my eyes up to around about anywhere between 0 and 100. But obviously what we do is let's put it on as at 1 stop overexposed, and let's take a step out. And that looks ridiculous, doesn't it? So let's come back in and let's take that down to half. Hang on. I don't think that actually selected, did it? So yeah, that does look silly, doesn't it? So let's take that down to about 50%, 0.58, and let's zoom out again and see what we've done. See, that looks much better. Yeah, I like that already. And what we can do there is we can just enhance the clarity, and we can just bring out Bethan's, because we're in black and white, so we're all about the tones here and the clarity. So shadows, yeah, be careful on shadows, because look what happens if I really increase the shadows. So use them sparingly. And I think let's have a look at that. So far, I think that's a bit much, isn't it? So let's come back on the shadows, just a touch, and maybe bring the exposure down to 0.5. Yeah, I think that's much better. Good. Right. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is Bethan's already got a brilliant, obviously, set of teeth. So what I want to do is just enhance them slightly. It's not lying. It's just enhancing what's already there. So let's teeth whiten a little bit. And before we do that, let's go in 1-to-1 and let's just colour in those teeth. And just be careful not to hit the gums or anything outside of the teeth. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's pull that back. See, that's already a lot better of a portrait, I think. Now, what I want to do next is, because Bethan's smiling here, I don't want to remove any of the lines that appear on her face. Now, one thing as a headshot photographer, you always come up against is vanity, basically. People thinking, oh, I don't really like my lines here. But the problem is, you've got to tell them and remind them that as an actor, lines and things like that on your face really shows character. So you need to convince your subjects to embrace these lines that they've got in their face. And what we can do, having said that though, a lot of people do have dark circles under their eyes. So what I'm going to do there, you can clone them out, but obviously you're not going to get a true clone in Lightroom. You could do it in Photoshop, but what I do in Lightroom is I just smooth over these lines. Just takes the harshness out of that little section under the eye. And we might just zoom out and see what we've just done. And if I keep pressing the backslash, we can see where we've come from. And that's not very helpful because where we've come from was a colour shot. So let me just show you what we've done here. And if I just select, so I can see what we've selected yet. So I might just bring up the shadows a touch. And also the highlights, not too far, because we'll actually be able to see what we've drawn there if we come too far, as the same with the exposure. So again, use it very subtly if you're going to use it. So yeah, and maybe we can take that clarity down even further. And that's fine. Right, now the next thing I want to do, what I love doing now, I've really found a style in doing this, is darkening the side of the face. Because we just, again, like I said before, we're just accentuating them shadows. And obviously that's ridiculous, that's too much, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that closer to 0 and it should look more natural. So if we keep that at 0.13, that looks a lot better. And what that does is that just enhances the right side of the face, and it just gives a nicer cheekbone shape, really. So I'm going to go even less with that. So let's pull that back a little bit further. I think I accidentally just created a new brush. I don't want to I have to remind you, I'm not drunk here. I do know what I'm doing. I am a professional. It's just my mouse seems to be doing what it wants to do. So let's just clone a couple of areas that we don't like. These might be just little bits of information that we've changed and it's showing up on the computer, i.e. the shadows and the highlights. Let's do the same on that side. Have we got any spots to remove or heal? Not really. Everything looks pretty good there. There's a little blemish there on the cheek I might get rid of. There we go. And one just below, a couple just below the nose. Brilliant. Okay, right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to play with the shadows and the highlights. I'm nearly done now, actually, because it's not really taken that long. In fact, no, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how I clone out hair. So some rogue hair here, and depending on the light that you're shooting in, you might be able to get away with this. But what I try and do is little bits at a time. There you go, and the computer just should know, Lightroom should know to clone from just, you know, an inch away or a couple of millimeters away from where you're trying to clone from, like that. And it normally does a pretty good job. And what I normally do is go into the crossroads of two hairs meet, and then that looks natural to me. Okay, we'll do the same here. And we'll keep going, and we'll get rid of this strand here. And again, we're just going to go up to that crossroads of hair. I'm just going to correct some of those actually, because I'm not quite happy with this one. I'm going to do that one again actually, just because I think I'm going to make my brush stroke a little bit wider and start from the bottom. And it easily does it, and she goes, and that should be a much better clone. Yeah, I'll get rid of that bit as well, and there's a little cheeky little bit here. Lovely. Okay, right, so that's that hair gone. Now, how distracting is that hair at the top? It is a little bit distracting, isn't it? So let's think about moving that. And again, you'll get this done a lot quicker if you use a wider brush. Then you obviously do risk losing detail in your shot. Because of Bethan's actual colour of her hair, it's so blonde. It was actually catching the light of the reflector, and it was just being illuminated. So I assume that's why it pulls a lot of focus. And let's just get rid of this little bit here. So there we go, that's... If I zoom out, look at that, good as new. It looks like she's had brain surgery there, so I think I better correct that. Which one is it that's causing the damage? Let's have a look at this now. Much, much better. Okay, what I'm going to do is just going to smooth over. So hit the soften skin tab, and I'm just going to smooth over that section. Just on the hairline there. There you go, good as new. Lovely. Right, so now what I'm going to do is just darken that side of the face. Now I've already done that. I am actually going a little bit mad here. I feel like I do need a drink. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to play with the shadows and the highlights. Now what I normally like to do, with landscapes, I would normally have a HDR image like that. I'd normally open up the shadows and I'd drop the highlights. But with a portrait, it just doesn't look the same. It looks awful like I just showed you. So if I put up the shadows a little bit, what that does is that'll bring up the clarity in your eyes and your subject's clothes. And then the hair, watch this, it just lifts the whole thing. Especially if your subject has got really sort of blonde hair like my subject has here. That really will help. So I'm just going to play with the contrast a bit. I'm just going to drop that up to about +10. And I'm going to bring those whites down a little bit because those highlights are a little bit hot. And the same with the black. So let's just bring them back. Yeah, because the further we go to the right, the more of a grey image we get. More of a low contrast image we get. So we don't want that. We want lots of contrast, lots of colour tone. Sorry, lots of tone because we've got no colour. So so that's pretty much a finished article. I think I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty good. That's pretty true to the word of what what I like to preach. I haven't really done too much to the image. Obviously, I've tidied up a few rogue hairs, darkened the shadow, I've enhanced the eyes and the smile a little bit. But apart from that, I haven't done a lot to it. I'm also just going to add a vignette, which I love to do. I always add a vignette to my portraits. And there we go. So there's a finished image. There's Bethan Searle, actress, who's just graduating the University of Gloucester. And one thing that I always do as well is if you press info, you can see your shot settings. So I shot this at 3.2, ISO 500, 1,000th of a second at my 70 to 200 f2.8 lens Sigma. If I hit I again, I can see the size of the image and today's date and time. And then if I can just cycle through those. So it's a useful little bit of information, just pressing I. And if you wanted to do full screen, obviously press F. There you go. Right, so I'm going to export that as a finished image. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. So that's the end of the tutorial. So I really hope that you've got something from this. Obviously, please do subscribe if you haven't done already, and tell your friends. Thanks very much. Until the next one, see you soon.